Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of B2B Live, where I speak with guests who are leading their industry, who are influencing and impacting lives in a positive way. Um, and they're sharing with us how we can better work together, collaborate with other businesses, other people. And today I'm actually super excited because I have a very special young man with me today. His name is AlexManzi, and he is going to be talking all things burnout, especially from the male perspective. So if you're a male, great, stay tuned. If you're a female, still stay tuned because you want to know how the masculine um, views burnout, how, like, what are the symptoms, what are the signs, and how you could support them. So welcome, Alex. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I'm having a wonderful day. So this is just adding to that wonderfulness. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
So am I. Normally, the conversation takes about 30 minutes, but I think today it's going to be a little bit longer because there is interest and I want to know. I want to know all things. Um, Please share with us who you are, who you serve, and how you are positively influencing lives.
Three big questions. So I'm Alex Manzi. I'm a coach and creative, and I typically work with entrepreneurs, creatives who have a big vision that they're building, that they're working on, but they tend to sort of feel a lack of fulfillment in that and a exhaustion in that, a burnout we could call it, and they want to kind of rebalance their lives so that they can feel fulfilled while doing the work that they typically enjoy and keep creating, more and more and greater things in their careers. So yeah, that's what I serve, and the positive impact I'm having, I would like to think ripples down in people's businesses. I also have a podcast in the moment with Alex Manzi, which is one of the most downloaded self-development podcasts in the UK. And I've got a book called The Search for Clarity that I put out in 2020 that's been read by, I don't know how many people, 1,000 people, I don't know, which is also out there having positive impact in people's lives as well.
That's wonderful. So we have a book, we got a podcast, and we're talking burnout.
Mhm.
Why did you start this podcast? Why did you write this book? Tell us why. Something must have happened, and I want to know.
So you can probably guess where this is going to go, but I had my own version of a burnout, or initially it was depression. When I was in my mid-20s, I was working in advertising. I had, a good girlfriend. I had a good job. I was earning good money. I was on my way to buying a house. I was having nice holidays every year, but I just felt miserable in within myself. I wasn't enjoying any of it, and I had a breakdown in front of my girlfriend at the time, now an ex-girlfriend, and it was kind of the first time that I'd admitted to myself, but also to someone else, that I just didn't feel happy, and that just, as terrible as it felt at the time, like it was one of the worst experiences of my life. Like I've never felt so low, so dark in all my life, but it also opened the door to, okay, well, what else can be possible, right?
Mhm.
Something must be able to change. Like what can change? Like what, what does being happy really mean? And if you've got all this stuff and you're not happy, what does it really mean? So I went on that journey, and it was about 18 months or so that I was kind of on my own journey, just doing my own thing, changing my habits, reading into different philosophies, meditating, all these kinds of things. And I transitioned out of my advertising job into a social media production job at the BBC, at Radio 1 Extra, which is one of the biggest radio stations in the UK. And I'm trying to think what the timeline was, but I basically felt inspired by the change that I've seen in my life. I started my podcast because listening to podcasts was a big part of my learning journey. And I wanted to create a platform for the people that inspired me, that were in my network, the people that I was connected to, that could, come and share their stories and kind of understand their motivations and how their careers have developed and stuff like that. That then blew up. That then became like a top 2 or 3 podcast in the UK in the the Apple chart was different back then, but this was like 2017, so it was called like the alternative health category or something.
Mhm.
Now it's like education and health or something. So I started getting a lot of attraction to my Instagram, to the stuff I was putting out on the podcast. Naturally, people started reaching out to me, asking me for help because I was sharing my story. They were like, "You seem like someone I can ask advice, to." And that kind of was the transition towards coaching. And then the more that I kind of just told people my story, just casually, people I was meeting, people were like really inspired by it. So I had an insight in 2020, early 2020. I was traveling for the first couple of months before, quarantines and lockdowns and stuff like that. And the insight was like, when you get back to London, like write a book.
Mhm.
And I already had like loads of writing that I'd done over the years. I had like 100 pieces of writing. So it wasn't so much writing the book. It was more like, can I take what I've got and turn it into something? And then that became the book, The Search for Clarity, which kind of documented my journey from depression to creating a life that I love and that fulfills me, that is based on internal fulfillment and internal, validation rather than external. And in various places in that story, I've hit different points of burnout because I like to do lots of things at the same time.
You like to be busy, and
Yeah.
your hands need to be occupied, right?
Yeah, do you know what it is like? I've started calling myself a creative more because I'm a coach. Like that's my full time income. That's how I earn my money. That's my job. But I've started calling myself a creative more because I actually, it sounds funny, but I can't help to like, I can't not create things. Like even if just in my spare time, like I'll be having some fun on my laptop. All of a sudden I've created an ebook or like, yeah, just like, it's just like, I don't know what it is. I just like to do those things. So that kind of creative itch is a really important part of me and who I am. It's like that creative itch needs to be scratched in order for me to show up and do the work that I do. So yeah, I like to keep my hands busy, but hopefully with stuff that is
Mhm.
actually having impact in the world and making a positive difference rather than just something that isn't.
Yeah, you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
Before we start getting into some of the main topics, you touched on so many areas where you were in by outward standards, by societal standards, you were in a great job. You had a great position. You had a wonderful and lovely life. You were on your way to buy this incredible home. You were on your vacations. I don't know how many times a year that you could go on. And then all of a sudden you have this breakdown. Now, there are a lot of men. They could be maybe middle aged, and now it's even earlier that
Yeah.
this is happening. Some of them in their mid 20s, because every time we hit that quarter century point, we always go through a transition, anyways. But
Mhm.
they think to themselves, well, I have all of this, and perhaps I need to practice gratitude more. One of the things that we see a lot is that, well, just be grateful, show gratitude, wake up in the morning, and if something's not working, maybe you're not um, appreciative. However, you're saying that you went through that, but
Mm.
that still was not satisfying. And so you went through this whole transition. Please share a bit more if there's someone that's listening, maybe in the replay, perhaps live, that is thinking to themselves, should I be feeling more grateful, or is like, do I have to go through a breakdown, or like, what do I need to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot recently because from a guy's perspective, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just guys. I'm sure there's women that fit in this
Yes.
category. So I'm massively generalizing, but from a guy's perspective, because the perspective that I know, the solution to the problem. So the problem to most guys is that what I have isn't enough. So the
Mm.
solution is normally I'm going to work harder, right? And you can see that that's just a one-way train to burnout or to something of that ilk, right? Depression or whatever it may be. So what I started to notice is that as men, generally, we're very good at the doing side of stuff. The being productive, working hard, you know, even like going to the gym and like the physical stuff. Like we're very good at the doing because that's what we've been taught from a young age. We've been taught that the doing is good. Like, and the more you do, the better. So we've got this seed in our brain, which is like, okay, if I'm not feeling good, I need to do more. Right. But what I've noticed is actually that there's another track that we should be looking at, and that other track is the being, right? And how you're showing up in your life, the energy that you're carrying in your life, the place that you're operating from in your work, in your relationships, with your health. Because for me, for a long time, it was coming from this this lack, this neediness of, I need more, because more is, when I get there, then I'm going to feel why, right? But why never happened. I got there, but why never happened? And then the question is, well, if not that, then what's the next thing? So then you get into the doing more. Whereas the other track is the being of like, well, actually understanding that everything that you have already is more than enough. And it can still be cool to create more and have more, but not at the expense of seeing what you currently have as being inadequate. And that's the real trick, right? And that's what a lot of, high performers, high achievers, they burn off of the fuel of, I need to do more, right? But if you can do more from a perspective where it actually energizes you rather than drains you, that's coming from the energy that you're showing up with. That's coming from the being track, not the doing track.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is like the what's been a game changer for me, and still is. And I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. I still, have times where I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing too much. I need to slow down. But like, just being in recognition of like, hold on, what energy am I giving to this right now? What energy am I coming from with this right now? Is it coming from a lack, or is it coming from, this is energizing and I want to give more to it?
What I'm hearing, and please correct me if I get this incorrectly, is that the balance starts from the self. So the title of this is Balance in Work and Life Strategies to Conquer Burnout, obviously from a men's perspective. I'm here too, so I will share my thoughts. But your everything that you said about the doing, like the masculine energy, which is the doing piece, you're saying, and you talked about the being, which is generally associated with the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying go inward and balance that as well, because you're still operating from the masculine in the doing piece. But as you start incorporating the other side, the being piece, now you've become more creative, and you've learned to kind of like transmute your energy, not just to reach a destination, but to move through a journey to fulfill the purpose. Am I
Yeah.
right on that?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. And what was just coming up for me as you shared that was like a huge part of my journey. Like, honestly, like I think every day for about 5 or 6 years, I meditated. And that was a huge part of my journey, because sitting in that silence allowed me to being that in that being, that kind of feminine energy, if you want to call it that. I still think it's a masculine thing as well. I think it's a masculine stillness, a masculine power.
Mhm.
Being in that space allowed me to, open my mind to other things. And from that place, so for example, what I started to see was like, oh, actually, like, I think I actually had the idea of the podcast because I started meditating, right? I was like, oh, this is like in a meditation, it was like, oh, that'd be really cool to have some conversations with these people that I work around who are really interesting. And then I channeled my doing energy into that, but it came from the being, it came from that place first. So that's 100% important. And if you think about it like this as well, right? If someone's listening to this and you're a leader in your work, you might even be the boss, right? Or if you've got a partner or kids or whatever, it doesn't matter whether it's work or relationship, right? If you ask someone's partner, what do you love about your husband or boyfriend or whatever they are, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I love that he's so busy and that he works all the time. No partner
Are
has
you
ever said
sure?
that. Yeah, I'm 100% sure. Like, there's maybe 1% of partners would say that, right? If they really don't like their man, they'd be like, I love that he's working all the time, right? But if you said, what do you want from your partner? They'll say their presence, their listening, their care, their love. Those are softer energies, right? They're what I call them being energies, right? And it'd be the same as a leader. What do people want as a boss? They don't want a boss that's never available. They want someone that can help them, that can lead them, that can show them, that can help them grow. Softer energies, being energies. So it's not just like, oh, just do this
Mhm.
and not that. It's like, no, this incorporates the beingness, these softer energies incorporate with the harder energies, the doing stuff, because they cross into one another. And this is what I've really seen is like the clients that I've worked with, like just to give you one example, a client of mine is like a managing director at a production company, like very senior in his role and very good at what he does, hence why he's in the role. Yeah, the struggles that he's had is like always having work on his mind. So when he's at home, he's not present with his wife and his kid,
Mm.
right? So we work on him being more present at home with his wife and his kid so that their relationship evolves and grows and deepens. He feels happier because his relationship at home is good,
Mhm.
happy wife, happy life, as they say,
Mhm.
right? He carries that into work, he becomes more productive, right? He then takes that same energy of spending quality time with his team into his office. They get more productive because they're learning from him, or he's pointing it. So it feeds in, and this is yeah, what I find so amazing about it all, because it just all interlinks.
Yes. Uh, and I'm going to stick on what you talked about, which was being present, presence. I did a live last week by myself, and I talked about spiritual IQ. And I shared how your intellectual IQ, your emotional IQ, um, plus your spiritual IQ
Mm.
equals your presence. And you touched on all of that. A great example was with your client, your past client. I don't know if it's current client or past, where you talked about he's exceptional at what he does because that's why he's in that position, but he didn't have the presence. And so you showed him how to, the being part, that being part, right? Tapping into the spiritual uh, aspect. And people may not like that word because they may
Mm.
have different associations to it. But really, when you're going to meditate and sit with yourself, that's what
Mm.
it is. You're going inward. You're getting to know your spirit. You're connecting all of these different parts of your being. And then when you walk out of that space with your family, in your home, with your team, wherever it is, your presence
Mm.
is going to shine through. Some people call it aura. And so we're going to stick on the presence. And I love that you're coming alive in this conversation. That means you're enjoying what you're talking about. If someone is being present in their life, how can they spot burnout before it takes over? The reason why I'm asking this is a point that we're talking on, but sometimes we think I am present because I am doing
Mm.
the work. They may not have a coach, or maybe they had a coach and then they're on their own now. But with life, as you're aware, it's like those heart machines where it goes up, down, up, down,
Mhm.
right? So how can we spot that while we're being present?
It's a great question, and I can generalize a little
Mhm.
bit, and I can speak from my own experience, which is probably better. So, from my experience, and then I can generalize after. But from my experience, normally I know that I'm on the way to burnout or something similar because I'm consumed by one thing. So normally for me, that's work. When 99% of my thinking is about work, is about what project I'm working on, this client, that conversation I'm having, what podcast can I create. But although I enjoy it, right, it's showing me that I'm not allowing room for anything else to come into my brain, right? So and from that, normally what happens is I get to the end of the day and I'm exhausted mentally because I'm just like constantly in this whirlwind of thinking, right? So that's kind of my my experience. But generally speaking, as a generalization, I would say that it's I guess the only way I can put it is like feeling like you don't have enough energy for all of the things that are going on in your life.
Mm,
That's that's burnout, because if when a candle runs out of string, i.e. runs out of fuel, what happens? It burns out, right? That's where the phrase comes from. So
mhm,
It's when you feel like you don't have enough to give, that's normally a sign that you're leaning towards, it's not a sign necessarily that you are burnt out, but it's you're leaning towards it and you're edging towards it. So whenever that happens to me, and like I just told you my experience, I want to take a step back and ask myself some questions. Like, okay, what else can I, what else can I focus on? Okay, let me. What about my girlfriend, right? Like, let's
Mhm.
when it's the end of the day, let me sit down and let me just focus on having a conversation with her. Talk about her day, what's going on for her. You know, how's work? How's she feeling? Maybe talk about, we've got a trip coming up to Budapest in a couple of weeks' time. Let's talk about that. Let's plan. You
Mhm.
know, maybe it's take some space for myself. Maybe it's, okay, am I actually spending that much time on my health? Like, or am I just, has my health gone out the window because I'm so busy all the time? Let's readdress that. So there's normally like indications that, burnout is happening because life doesn't feel very balanced, is probably the best way to say it.
Mhm. And statistically, my understanding of burnout, it takes at least 3 years, maybe 24 or more months, about 3 years roughly, they say, when burnout begins. And then sometimes when it hits people, like, what happened? Um, but staying on spotting burnout and being present before it takes over. If someone is working on a deadline or a timeline for a very specific project. It's important. It could be for their business. It could be even a partnership, so to
Mhm.
speak. Those are stressful times. I know people do not talk about that because they always talk about, oh, you could be on a beach with your family and not worry about working things like, you're independent. But the fact and the reality is that, hey, sometimes you are on that beach with your family enjoying life, but a deal needs to be closed or a
Mm.
partnership needs to be resolved. Um, and that can be very stressful. From your perspective, maybe this has happened, maybe not, I'm not sure. How can others still utilize the presence to spot the burnout when there are like constricted time frames? Let's say in
Mm.
90 days they have a project that's due, but last year they scheduled, I don't know, a weekend retreat or something with their
Yeah.
significant other.
So I think the first thing I would want to know if I was in conversation with someone is like, okay, how concrete is the actual deadline?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first of all, right? Because more often than not, the deadlines aren't that concrete. Someone's just said, "Hey, this is the time we need the thing," and everyone goes, "Okay, cool, that's the time we need the thing," and it becomes the deadline, right? But if you actually inquire deeper, more often than not, like it's not really the deadline. Like there's always leeway. So first of all, let's address that. Like, is this deadline actually a deadline? Number one. Number two, what level of priority is it? Right? For you, for that person, what level of priority is it? Right? Is it a 10 out of 10 absolute top level priority, or is it a 6? Is it a 2? Right? Because we can adjust how much energy we give to it based on the level of priority. And then the third thing, I guess, would be it's more of a knowing that if you do have a deadline coming up, it's just a short term thing. You're not going to be in this go 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 for the rest of your life. You're not constricted to that for the rest of your life. It's not a life sentence. This is just a short sprint to a deadline. That's it, right? It's like when you see when the Olympics was on a few months ago, and I was watching a lot of the long distance track racing, so like the 1500 and all of that.
Mhm.
Like they do, what is it, 3.5 laps or something. So they do their laps, and then when they get to that last 200, 150, 100 meters, they all start sprinting as much as they can. But they're not going to be sprinting forever. They know that it's a sprint to the finish line, so that they can use all of their energy. And then once they've got to the finish line, they normally collapse on the floor and they rest, right? So it's like, let's identify first these three things. Like, what is the actual? Is it an actual deadline, or is it flexible? What level of priority is it? And if it is a 10 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 and it is an actual deadline, just understand like it's a short sprint for a little while. That's it.
Hmm.
You can rest after. It's fine. It's not the rest of your life. Don't worry about it.
No. Well, thank you for sharing those thoughts and really refocusing the priority and the importance and really thinking like, okay, what are the impact of this instead of just blindly going. Take time and be strategic and understanding, what is the impact, what are the effects, is this necessary at this time, like
Mm.
is this requiring my undivided attention, can the team handle it, look at the various perspective. And that's what a lot of top leaders, that's what they're doing. They're looking at the various perspectives. How is this going to affect the long term? What's the priority?
Mm.
So really well said. If anyone has a question, please feel free to put it in the comments. If I don't see it, if it doesn't pop up to me, please note that it will be answered later. um, and we thank you guys for being here. Alex, what are some easy to apply techniques to manage stress? And I don't
Mhm.
really like the word managing because managing stress just makes it seem like I'm still stressed, but I'm keeping it at a level where
Mhm.
um, is not the extreme. But that's the word that's here. So, how do we make be present and still utilize techniques daily to minimize stress?
Mm. So I love this question. I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and the thing that's always the most helpful for me when I just feel like, oh my God, like I don't know whether I'm coming or going, like there's so much going on, like I don't know to do this, to do that. Like the first thing I do is I just get out a piece of paper or open a document on my laptop
Mhm,
and I just write out everything that's in my head. I just write it all out so I can literally see it. So I can be like, okay, I've got the washing to put away. I've got to finish this podcast recording. I've got to, do this script. I've got to prepare this thing for a client. I've got this proposal to send. I've got these 4 emails to reply to. I've got this piece of writing, whatever it is, right?
mhm,
Look at it all on a piece of paper and then just sit with it and objectively go, okay, what's the 2 or 3 most important things on here? And can everything else really probably like, can putting the washing away wait until later or even tomorrow or whatever? Because more often than not, like I find 80% of the stuff that I'm thinking about can probably be done later. And there's only really ever like 2 or 3 priority things. So that for me is always helpful because it kind of I see the ridiculousness in some of the thinking and the worrying about certain things that I have when I have it on paper in front of me because I'm like, oh, okay, that doesn't make sense to worry about right now. Why am I worrying about it?
mhm,
So that's like a very, very practical thing. The other thing I would say is it's kind of less practical, but it's practical in a different way. It's think about what you want your priorities to be in your life, right? So if your priorities are, as an example, growing the business that you work in or helping your team thrive or whatever it is, that's one priority. Another priority is your health, and another priority is your relationship with your partner, your kids, whatever it may be. Cool. Now just ask yourself, how much time am I given to these 3 priorities? If they're all priorities, how much time am I given to them, right? And where does the balance need to be addressed? How
mhm,
can I spend more time with my family? How can I give more time to my health or be more focused with my health? How can I, it's usually give less time to the work thing, right?
mhm,
And that's a really practical way to just look at it as there might be other areas as well, don't get me wrong, like hobbies or whatever, but like look at what are the priorities for me, because it's going to be different for everyone, right? My priorities are different to your priorities, to whoever's watching this priorities. Like what are your priorities, at least the ones that you say are your priorities, and how much are you actually treating them all as priorities, or have you just got one priority that you're so obsessed with
mhm,
and the others are kind of falling by the wayside? So that would be another one. And then the third one, I would say meditate.
mhm.
Just sit, meditate 10 minutes a day. Just do it. Just everyone's got
And
10 minutes before you go to work, when you get home. If you haven't got 10 minutes, find 5 minutes and
mhm.
just sit and be and just observe your thinking. Like it, honestly, it will change your life. Just 5-10 minutes a day. That's all you need.
One thing that you talked about, and I want to stick with it a bit aside from the presence. You talked about the emotion. Look
Mm,
at things objectively. That's what you said. You got to look at things objectively. So you talked about the agenda or time blocking for each one. Well, you reference, you didn't use the word time blocking. What are the priorities? What can wait? And then you said, look at it objectively. For me, I hear objectively, I'm thinking you can't get the emotions involved.
mm.
Is that, am I correct in thinking that or no?
In a way, it's not. So just to be clear, it's not to demonize emotion. It's not like everyone needs to become this AI robot that doesn't have emotions. I love my emotions.
Yeah.
I fully promote like accepting every emotion that's on the emotional scale, from like extreme joy and happiness and excitement to anger and sadness and everything in between, right? By looking at things objectively, it takes out the mind's stories, right? Because what happens is, like, if you look at, let's go back to the priorities, right? Let's just say business, health, family, right? Three priorities. You'll look at those and go, okay, cool, these are my priorities. And then your mind will go, yeah, but business is really busy right now. So we've got to make sure that we're focused all the time. We don't drop the ball and so yeah, like the health thing can wait a little bit. And so the mind's got these stories that it creates, these narratives that it creates, which is the mind's job. So it's fine. It's always going to do it. It's never going to stop. But if you're able to just look at the facts, right? So objectively, okay, what are my priorities in my life, and how much time am I given to them, and how much time would I like to give to them, objectively speaking, because it will show you a picture, and then you have a choice. You either don't do anything about it, or you do something about it, and you
Mhm.
can just do it from an objective point of view without, yeah, but this and that, and we just come back from a 3-week holiday, so I spent loads of time with my family, so I got to now do it, and the health, and it just turn the volume down.
So thank you for explaining that aspect of it in terms of looking at something objectively, but still being true and authentic to what's actually happening uh, throughout the day in terms of the emotion, the emotional piece. What this sounds like is mastery of self,
Mm,
essentially. In order for you to find your balance, and in order for you to find the balance and to conquer burnout, you talked about presence, you talked about presence, being objective while being consciously aware of your emotions, and looking at the facts. And so to me and meditation. Every single time you end with take meditation, go and sit with yourself. This to me sounds like learning how to master yourself in
mhm,
any tradition. If some people, a lot of men that I've come across and that I'm aware of, when they're reading any sort of text, they're looking more so at like the Stoic way of thinking. Is that like Stoic philosophies, which really highlights mastery of self,
mhm.
and or if they have something that they believe in, a faith that they believe in, there it's always mastery of self. What are your thoughts on that? Am I on the right track here when it comes to it? And it seems to me that's how they um beat burnout or conquer it.
Yeah, it's a great way to see it, actually, and I never quite seen it that way. I would say it's like managing yourself,
Yes.
in a way, but mastery of self is a great way to look at it, because that's what it is. It's mastering your energy, it's mastering your responses, it's mastering your choices, it's mastering your time. It's all of it, right? and
Yeah.
and you know spoiler alert, the person at center of it all is this person right here, right? It's you, it's yourself. So
Mhm.
yeah, like mastery of self is definitely important, and that's, if I really look at what I do, I guess that's what I do, right? Is I help people master themselves so that they can master their lives, which sounds
Right.
like a catchphrase that I made up. I just made it up now, right? And it's and it's yeah, it's fascinating, because most people just have like a track that they're on, because it's the only track that they've known, and they're not willing to look at, okay, what's another track that's available here that I can take that can get me to the same place, but maybe the journey's a bit more fun, or a bit less stressful, or a bit less, whatever, and a bit more something else. because that's the real magic, because it's available. And the only way that you can see that is to pause mentally, physically, spiritually, and take an objective look at what's going on in your life, right? And make a decision from there.
Mm-hmm. So you teach them how to master self. That's like a lifelong journey in and of itself. Yes, you equip them, you help them lay the foundation. They probably go off. There's a good likelihood that they're staying in the community, because we all need to be refreshed, if not daily. Well, we all need to be refreshed daily, but at least weekly or monthly, getting that dose of support, and not only just support, but actionable direction and intention in order to maintain and to stay the course. I know a lot of communities out there that business owners own, and I'm speaking generally here. The community is a community because maybe they're using it as a multiple source of income. They said, okay, I want to help people grow, and what happens is it becomes stagnant. So then they tier it to different levels. But when it comes to conquering burnout in your community, you can't see it like that. I'm not in your community because I'm thinking it's mostly men. I mean, women can come in your community as well, but you can't approach it from that specific direction, especially when it comes to balancing work and personal, which we discussed a bit more. We landed on mastery of self. So if anyone comes in your community, specifically a man, and they're saying, okay, Alex, I love it. Thank you. I'm happy at home. I'm happy on work. We're thriving on all fronts. They come in your community. What can they expect in terms of maintaining the balance between work and their personal life?
So I would say that there's a choice, right? If someone comes in like my life is amazing, right? My career is good, my work is good, my relationship's good, my health is good. Great. Do you want to keep it that way? Or what's the next game that you want to play? You have a choice. Either way, you can learn. You can learn to maintain, or you can learn to play another game, either in your career or with your health or with your relationship. Because there's always, and it's not like a lack thing, like I was saying before. It's like just seeing, like, if you're here, like, there's always available, but don't make here inadequate, and that's the important thing, is to see that more will always be available in whatever phase of your life, in whatever part of your life, in whatever stage you're at in your life. More will always be available, but don't create more as being better than what you already have. Create what you have now as being enough, and then play the game of like, oh, wouldn't it be fun, like, if I could do more or have more? That would be quite fun. And that's it.
For everyone that's tuned in and just joined, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment, put it in chat, and Alex will answer it. Alex, I want to stick on this because it sounds like it's something you can breeze over, which you cannot. And you're saying, based on the foundational stuff that we talked about, leading to mastery, which was meditating, which was the prioritizing, right? Mastering yourself. So meditating, which leads to mastery of self, or presence, meditation, mastery of self. And now you've encountered someone who says, I've got it. I'm good. Life is great. Things are flowing. And so you said, that's wonderful. So how are you going to maintain it? And I think that's a very hard question for people to come up with. And some of them, I just straight out lie to your face and say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. The fact is, they can't keep doing what they're doing because we can never stay at the same threshold where we are at, because that's where stagnation comes in. And people don't necessarily see it from that perspective. That self-righteous, I know it, I got to do it. And you see this a lot. Like, there's people in the gym, or they're like, oh, I need to work out. I need to do something. And like, but I know what I got to do. I know what I have to do. There's knowing, there's doing, there's being in harmony with it. So not only is there the knowing, but now you're implementing these steps to go forth. So you're saying to them, okay, great, you know how you're going to keep it that way. I want to know. Please share
Mm.
with all of us. There's over like 60 people tuning in right now to listen to you. What is that balance? How can I maintain that level of balance between my work and my personal life? So then I'm not going to the extreme highs. I'm not going to the extreme lows. I'm not snapping maybe 90 days down the road. People
Mm.
don't recognize that these things build up. It takes
Mm.
time. And in 3 months, how long is a season? A season is like 3-4 months, like winter, summer, spring, right? Things are always shifting. It's evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we maintain this? I'm
Yeah.
thinking beyond self-mastery, because I
Yeah,
know it's
yeah, yeah.
part of the mastering oneself, but what can they do?
Well, the simple answer would be, if you're good and you're happy and you feel like you're at a level that you want to maintain, just keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to do anything different. Like, maintaining is don't do anything different, right? It's do all of the things that you're doing and keep doing them, right? The problem with that is, you said, stagnation, right? The mind starts going, yeah, but we want more, we want more, we want more. And you start, generally speaking, again, this is my experience, I start leaning more towards something and the balance starts to shift. But I keep telling myself, oh no, I'm maintaining, but the balance is shifting over time. And that's when we get to that, 3 months down the line and we're like, holy, how did I end up here?
Mhm,
Because
mhm,
we've tricked ourselves, right?
mhm,
Maintaining is keep doing everything how you're doing it, because that's what maintain. Like, if you're, if someone's like, working on a gym program, workout program, right? And they've got to a stage where they're, I don't know, bench pressing 75 kilograms or, whatever, right? Maintaining is keep bench pressing 75. Don't do 80. Don't do 70. Don't do 100. Don't do like, just keep doing 75. You'll maintain, right? But the problem is, at some point, you're going to go, oh, I wonder if I can do 80. And you'll put 80 on, and then you put 85. And then all of a sudden, you're at this point, you're like, hold on, how did that happen, right?
mhm,
Because again, the brain starts weaving these narratives. So if maintenance is really what you want, don't change anything.
mhm.
And if that's what you're telling yourself what you want, because actually you're scared about what could be next, it's a whole different question.
Yeah.
That's a question of like, hey, well, what are you scared of?
Before we get to the last point, I want to bring a scenario to you. And this is a real life. So there's two of them. I will use a young man that I know of. No, you know what? No. I use a young woman. She has a business. This is a true story, by the way, right? But I want to hear your perspective on this. She has a business. She gets clients, uh, but she's young, and now she's about to approach 30, and just recently got engaged. But the stress now is coming. So her and her fiance, they are in the business together and they work together. And of course, she's the lead. Everyone talks with her and stuff like that. And they're getting the clients, people are referring them. But then she starts neglecting the clients because she wants to go and do the weekend trips
Mhm.
or the whichever trip. And so things get neglected. Clients want to make sure that they are top of mind. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if they're the best client, the favorite client. They want to know, did the work get done? And or if things are stagnant, why are they the same? I know me personally, if I see something the same after 30 days, I'm like, what's going on? And it's
Mhm.
not like in a bad way or anything. I just ask the questions.
Mm.
And then I say, okay, well, what do I need to do? Where are we at? What type of results should I be looking for? And the reason why I do that is because I need to have benchmarks. It isn't because I necessarily want to do more or to be more or anything like that. What it is I do not want to remain stagnant, because when you start getting stagnant, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, then what's the point in what you're doing, right? And we're humans, and this is part of who we are. We're always evolving and growing. An old saying, right? An idle
Mhm.
mind is the devil's playground. People probably don't say that anymore. They probably don't even know what that means, but it's an old saying. What can someone, if someone comes to you and they're like, this is happening, but I got it under control. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to take a university course because I want to upgrade or I want to finish this program. What would you say to that? Would you recommend like, hey, get a coach right now? Or would you say, maybe you need to redirect? I don't know. Tell me, that happens. What do you do?
Well, it's without having many like detail, I'd honestly would need a lot more detail and
Yeah.
understand more the person and the picture and the vision and
Mhm.
the mission and all of that kind of stuff. But just based on what you shared, I would say, well, again, what's the priorities, right? If like you use the young girl getting married, wants to plan for that, cool. That sounds like quite a big priority to me. It's a once in a life, well, at least you'd hope it's a once in a lifetime day, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like quite a big priority. So maybe you want to look at, okay, cool. Do I want to keep taking on more clients, or do I want to go from 10 clients to 8 so I have the time without sacrificing my income? Maybe it might mean putting my fees up a little bit.
Mhm.
Go from 10 clients to 8 so I have more time so that things aren't getting dropped over here, so that I can focus on weddings and planning and visiting venues and speaking to planners and all sorts of stuff that goes on for dress shopping and all this sort of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And just look at, again, objectively, what are the facts, right? What's the
Mm.
priorities right now, and how much time do you want to allocate to those priorities that make sense considering what's coming down the road, or what you want to have coming down the road, and look at it from that objective point of view, because then that will give you the plan to put in place. And again, without having all of the facts and all of the data, but again, objectively speaking, that would, to me, would make sense. And that's for anything. It's like, what is the actual thing that's a priority now, or the things that are a priority right now, and how much time allocation can you give them without overdoing it, without being like, oh, I can give 60 hours a week to my work, and then I've got you. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, rest, have time with your friends, your family, do your work, and plan your wedding.
What I heard, everybody always hear different things, right? When people speak, was we must subdue the ego, relating back to mastery of self. Because you mentioned, I know you didn't say about put your ego aside, but you mentioned considering, hey, cut down on clients instead of 10 clients a month, maybe 8, and increasing the fee. And the ego will tell us, no, you need more clients, because if you don't have more clients, then what if, 2 of them leave, for example? You still need to have a steady income to maintain the standard of living. I have X expenses. I want to do all of these things. I want my wedding to cost this and that. If I'm correct in assuming part of the mastery, which you spoke about, is also part of subduing the ego to find the balance, well, that's a whole other ball game. That's a whole other level of coaching that you are taking your clients on. And if that's the case, please share more.
Well, that's the work, right? That most people don't realize that's what the work is, but that is the work.
Mhm.
Subdue the ego and work in a way that makes sense, because as you said there, right, straight away, as you were like, yeah, but then what if this, and what if it's the mind going, yeah, but
Mhm.
right? And the more we listen to that, the more confusing things become, because okay, well, what if you put your fees up 50% and you
Mhm.
take on 2 less clients? You're going to be earning more money and working less time, so that all of that stuff doesn't matter. The ego is worrying about you're making more money and spending less time anyway. So it's, again, it's objective, without the subjective stories that the mind loves to input in, because it wants to make itself sound important, right? Like, hey, I know what I'm talking about too.
We just got a comment from Blast Boy who says, that sounds like an amazing discussion. I'm looking forward to gaining practical insights on managing burnout and achieving balance. Now, let's get to that last final point, because I have somebody right after to do an interview right after you. Building resilience, I think, such a great way to end. And thank you, Last Boy, for sharing this comment here, because how do we build resilience after every single thing that we've talked about and discussed as we're trying to prioritize and find this balance in life
Okay.
without burning out?
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, right? So I love the idea of resilience, right? But
Mm,
I think the word itself is very misleading. And I'm not pointing the finger at you. This is just generally like I use it as well sometimes. Like resilient is opposite to fragile, right? So fragile is if you drop something, it will break very easily. Resilience is you build resilience over time, so you can keep whacking something and no damage will happen, right? And you can build resilience by keep taking bumps. Like the body's resilient, right? The body gets a cut, it heals itself and it gets stronger. Like you get a scar, but the skin is tougher over the scar than it is around it, right? You go to the gym, you work out, you basically tear your muscles, they grow stronger, right? So you have to do damage to get stronger. That's what resilience is, right? You have to do damage to get stronger. Now, there's a third option called anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is how can things happen and you bounce back stronger, but you're not affected by them, right? So like a bouncy ball, like bouncy balls,
mhm,
they're anti-fragile, right? If you drop that on the floor, it just keeps bouncing, it goes dong 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 dong, and there's no damage done to it, right? So that's what I'm more interested in. How can you build? How can you become anti-fragile? How can things happen to you, good or bad?
mhm,
You don't see them as good or bad, but you learn from them and you grow, because that's real growth, right?
mm,
You learn and you grow. You don't go, oh my God, I can't, I don't want to do this because, last time I done that, this thing happened right? You learn and you grow. You see it again. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not right. It's not wrong. You learn from it. You grow from it. That's the path.
I've never heard of anti-fragile before. It's
Yeah.
I've never heard that term. If anybody has heard that term, please share with me this term. How did you come up with that? Because a lot of even I use the word resilience.
Yeah.
So, but you know what I don't like? When people are like, well, kids are resilient. They'll get over it. They'll be fine. And I'm like, no, not really. Depending on what the heck it is they're going through, because they're dealing with so many other emotions and they have never experienced anything like maybe what they've experienced before. We have.
Mm.
So it's easy for us to be like, oh, you'll be resilient, you'll bounce back. But this anti fragile description, this term that you've coined, which by the way, I think is cool, um, really gets us into the understanding of a word. So an egg is fragile. A
Hmm.
bouncy ball is not fragile. A bouncy ball it's soft but firm at the same time. Ooh, we're going somewhere here.
There we go.
Yeah, you bounce it. It tends to have either smooth or it has holes. If it's tougher, it will have like little bumps in it
Yeah.
because the construction of that ball is meant to be bounced on a road, not like in the home or played so you can do dodgeball or something like that. So that's why it stings when you get
Mm.
hit with the ball.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So why did you come up with this term anti-fragile versus using the word resilient? Because we went from being present,
Hmm.
meditating, mastering yourself, I know, to anti-fragile.
Mm.
Why? Why anti-fragile? How does this tie in at the end?
So first of all, I didn't come up with the phrase. My coach introduced me to it, and I believe there's a book called Anti-Fragile. I haven't read it, but
Mm,
I believe there is a book. I don't know if it's about the same thing, um, but it ties in because it's all the same stuff, right? We look at mastering yourself. Mastering yourself is seeing what's going on, learn and grow, right? Looking at we were talking about priorities objectively. Where do you want to allocate your time, your energy? Learn and grow. Be present. What are you being present for? Because you can learn and you can grow, right? In your relationships, in your work, in your health, right? Meditation. What's meditation? Meditation is sitting still, being with your thoughts, observing them, so that you can do what? Learn and grow, right? So it's all the same thing, really. And it's just knowing where you're applying what and why and how sometimes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Alex, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, because you might think, okay, B2B Live collab, it's all about how I'm collaborating with business. But today, Alex shared with us, we need to be able to collaborate with ourselves within
Mm.
ourselves. And that is the biggest partnership that you will ever have in your entire life. Learning how to partner with you, learning how to collaborate with you, learning how to align your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self. And it ain't easy. So if you have any questions, if you're looking at, man, you know what? Things are working, but I'm a little bit shaky in a particular area, or I need improvement, reach out to Alex. So, Alex, how can they find you?
Best place, the places that I hang out the most are Instagram and Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it these days. At I am AlexManzi. I am on LinkedIn, but I don't really check it that often.
Mhm.
Although I do get a notification email when I get a message. So either of those three platforms, just look for my name at I am AlexManzi, and you shall find me.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I thank you for taking us through presence, meditation, mastery of self, and of course, anti fragile, being able to bounce back. Have an incredible day, everyone. And I'll see you next week, Wednesday. Have a great day.